Welcome back to the Fantasy Grimoire podcast, where today I have author Alexandra K. Sloane joining me. She is a fantasy romance author, and she is currently working on When the Stars Entwine with Flames, amongst other things. So, Alex, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
I would love you to tell our listeners about how we met and how we kind of ended up together, because that's quite a journey.
It is a journey. We met through a mutual beta reader, Kate. She told me about you long before we ever met. She told me that she had this South African author friend who lived in the Netherlands, had this amazing accent, and she was helping her with her fantasy books. And she said, like, you need to reach out to Stephanie. You need to, like, you guys should, connect. And I was very timid when I first entered this community. I really wasn't sure what I was doing, where I was going, and put me out in a bar setting with friends and things, and I'm like the light of the show. But when it comes to putting myself out vulnerably as a professional, I get very timid. I am afraid to reach out and connect to people. So Kate was that in between and stepping stone for me. So she basically said, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And she just threw us all together. And it worked. And now look at us today.
Yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying there, because I think when I started my author Instagram account, it was faceless, because I am not a shy person by any means, but this idea of putting myself out there to a bunch of strangers on the internet, it freaked me out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, what if they don't like me? What if they hate my books? What if we know cancel culture is a thing. There was this whole what if scenario that played in my mind. But the moment I started including my face more in my collateral on my account, I found that is when my connections really started coming amongst the Instagram bookish community. So that was a huge lesson that I personally needed to learn, but it's also why I relate so much to what you're saying there, because it is scary. With our books, we're putting our hearts in those books and we're going, please don't hate us.
Yes. Yeah, that's a perfect way to summarize that.
Let's talk about what you are writing at the moment. So I mentioned When Stars Entwine with Flames. I know you have a few manuscripts that you're working on, but that is really where your focus is right now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Sure. So I want to really make sure that I'm a multi-dimensional author. I definitely plan on heavily writing for Romantasy, but I really don't want to contain myself to that one niche genre. More than most that I have multiple manuscripts, many different outlines, waiting on the runway. And I have a dark romance that I want to write. I have a contemporary romance that will be like nostalgic during like the time of early 2000s rom-coms. That's been something just stewing away in the back of my head. But that I have just a diehard love of dark academia. So I have a manuscript idea for that. And I have paranormal and urban fantasy as well. So I really don't want to confine myself to one genre, let alone one subgenre. But it will primarily be Romantasy. And then my current manuscript, When Stars Entwine with Flames, it's basically done. I have like 3 chapters that I'm just procrastinating on finishing. But it's something. It actually stemmed from this idea when I was reading Fourth Wing in July of 2023. I had already seen, for a couple months before that, it was going viral all over BookTok. And that's where I started, was BookTok versus Bookstagram. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to read this. I want to see what the hype is. I had a lot of stuff spoiled. As when you're on social media, you get spoiled. But I didn't know the context. So So there was a lot of just missing things of like what happened for that to occur. And so I read it, and it was the spicy scene towards the end where Xaden basically says like, oh, like let's get you to 5, 5 O's. And I was like, bet, bitch. And I just, for some reason, this concept just came to me of writing, this super spicy romantasy, because this series will be spicy.
Mm-hmm.
Slow burn, so you're not going to get pretty much anything in book 1, but it won't be as slow as the Kindred Curse saga slow burn, which I still got that up. But so this concept with this getting to 5 O's, I was like, okay, where is this going? And then I have like a personality changing level obsession with Sailor Moon, an anime from the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
It's very heavy on celestial magic. And I love anything celestial. Like you can see, like I am obsessed. And I've always wanted to kind of take that element of anime and just celestial and turn it into more of what the current romantasies are.
Vesper with her blue hair, like you have some character art on your page that you've just been sharing about it. And I'm just like, if I could dye my hair blue right now, I would. It's so cool.
It's so cool. Like I really want like baby pink hair, but I'm super pale. That's not going to work. Like it might work if I was, like alabaster white, like no freckles, nothing. But colored hair it's such a vibe. It's such a mood. I love it so much. So it's like I'm basically vicariously living through these characters with their fun colors. And I haven't shared yet, but I mean, there's a whole cast in When Stars Entwine with Flames that they all have these hair colors. They all have, and it's unique to each of their personalities. So yeah,
that is very cool, and I am so excited. But side note, I find as writers, we say a lot, I am so excited, but I haven't really figured out a better way to say that. But I genuinely mean that from the bottom of my heart. I am so excited for this book. I know that I have selfishly tried to bully you with love to beta read for you, because I am desperate to get my hands on this book, and you're just like, soon, but like not ready.
It's true. I think like for half of 2024, I was like, oh yeah, I'll get you the manuscript before like the holidays, so that way you could read it, when you have you free from work.
Yeah.
Oops.
Wait, maybe that will be my 2025 Christmas gift, or no, birthday gift, or just your awesome gift. All of those can work.
It'll be a gift in 2025, absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic. Which now leads us into the next question. If we look at how romantasy has done overall as a genre, it is outperforming most of the other genres right well. And we have these series that are being created that is just exploding, where readers are rereading, they're creating podcasts, they're creating conspiracy theories, which, let's be honest, is every author's dream. Like, let's not deny that. But what do you think it is about romantasy specifically that is turning readers feral, for lack of a better word?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great word. So I consider 3 main factors. So the first one, it's an escape from reality. The majority of us, we have regular 9-to-5 schedules. There's a little bit of a mundane aspect to our lives, because we are having the necessity of, working for a paycheck. That's just kind of how it is. So you get to escape, you get to go and have an adventure and feel more significant when you dive into fantasy. Mm-hmm. But that also ties in with the second, which is a lot of romantasies, they're in first person. And so it adds to that craving for escapism, where the reader gets to feel as though they're the one experiencing the journey that the MC is going through.
That to me, that is a drop mic moment right there. I have never thought of it that way before.
Yeah, so it's there's that. That's why first POV is the number one POV that most readers want, is because they get to basically feel as though they're the FMC, they're the main character, whether it's male, female, non-binary, and so it also then with the third factor is that the MMCs in romantasy, they like basically pluck at these strings of different traits that we wish we had in real life from men.
Still reeling over that admission about first POV, because I've heard in the industry that third POV is actually the preference. So the fact that you're saying this to me is life-changing, for lack of a better word again. Because I'm hearing a lot of readers going, oh, I don't like first POV because there's too much use of I, and not enough variation in pronoun and whatnot. So yeah, that is just an incredible insight that you've shared there.
Yeah. So I will say, in the genre of fantasy, the full genre, especially for high fantasy, third POV is preferenced. For Romantasy specifically, it's first. Yeah.
You learn something new every day.
All right. But yeah, so for the MMCs, you know, it's there's this partiality for men written by women, you know, and it creates these absolutely feral Romantasy readers, as you said, because it's these men that we wish that they were like in real life. Obviously, there's some aspects where if they, you know, like, you know, my house, my woman, my chair, like we'd be like, sit down, you know. Yeah. we wouldn't put up with it. But in books, there's just this dynamic where there's a little piece where we want, you know, a guy to be like that, and it just, again, it adds to that escapism.
That is so true, because I was actually questioning this last year with the friend Kate that you referenced, and she explained it perfectly. What is a red flag in books is something we'd run from in real life. So I was like, if a man tries to save me in real life, I'll probably be like, sit back down, son, I can save myself. Yes. But in a book, I'm like, take me, you know, kind of equivalent.
Yeah, that's right.
So I totally relate to what you're saying there, which now leads me to ask, what do you think it is about ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, and Fourth Wing specifically that has, I think those are our three series that are the real standouts in the romantasy genre. Obviously, there's a lot of other great romantasies out there as well.
Yes.
I know I enjoyed the Kindred Curse saga, which you were referencing earlier as well, which I think is definitely rising in popularity as well. But what do you think it is specifically about these series? What is the common denominator amongst them that you think is creating such loyalty amongst the readership?
So for me, I think that, one, they're complex, that they're very, you know, thought out plots and character arcs and development and worlds, you know, they're diverse, and they have a very relatable and thought out cast of characters. It's not just the MMC and FMC. It's, you know, it takes a village to raise a family. You know, you will always have, you know, you need friends to be able to support yourselves, to get through life, you know, and to fight through this world together. You know, it's never this solo venture. And, you know, there's always those moments in books where, you know, the main character's like, I have to go do this alone. And you're like, please, it just took this whole village, you know, of friends to get you there. So no, it wasn't just you. And I think that, you know, these supporting characters, they have their own journeys. You know, it creates this dynamic of, you know, you're not just reading a one or two character story, you're reading a full family. And I think that the found family trope is honestly one of the most important ones, because if you look at the statistics, the most popular and best-selling books, it's not just the FMC and MMC. It is a whole crew of characters. And, you know, they are snarky, or they have charm, and they have growth in each of the books. And that just feels very corporeal to readers, because, you know, we all thrive on our besties. We need our besties. And so that relatability in, you know, Fourth Wing, ACOTAR, and TOG, it shows it, because, you know, even if they're in first POV, you see those personalities, you see their importance to the main characters. And I mean, come on, Azrael in ACOTAR, like he barely talks, and he's like everyone's favorite character. So I think that it's the side characters that make those the most popular.
So that is the second mic drop that you have had now, because I was referencing the Rule of the Damp, my last release, where if there was one, let's say, common denominator I could see amongst the reader feedback, was that they loved the diverse cast, where it is definitely the biggest cast I've written, even for it challenging for me as an author. And now that you've said it, I can't unsee it. So yeah, that's the second mic drop we've had. Let's see if we can go for a third one in this episode still. Plot twist though, no pun intended. Who do you think Amryn really is in the wider SJM world? A lot of people are talking about she's maybe godlike, she's angel-like. What is your theory on her background, or her history, I should say?
So I definitely was more so leaning towards the theories before House of Flame and Shadow came out, that she was an Asteri, but I don't necessarily know, because she doesn't need, she drinks blood to be able to survive before she went into the cauldron. But I lean more so towards potentially someone from hell, the hell dimension. Because again, demons, like, they thrive on blood and whatever, and I think that she could be either a daughter, or she could be like the princess of hell, because she has that same amount of power that the princes do, where they could kill an Asteri, and she went full explosion in ACOTAR in the battle. So I feel like she could kind of be like the female version of Lucifer, because he was a fallen angel. So that's my theory. I definitely think that there's a lot of things that happen in Crescent City. Again, this is a very spoiler thing. So if you have not read Crescent City, ACOTAR, and TOG, you need to fast forward this part of the podcast. Spoiler warning. But there's so many elements from CC where you find out like that there's descendants from TOG in CC, and there's elements from like the Truth Teller dagger being part of the sword that the Stars sword in Crescent City. So I think that it would not be too far-fetched that, again, there's the Fae from Avalon, who were from obviously ACOTAR, and they they opened that portal, they transferred. So I definitely feel like Amryn could easily have been from hell, and like they're the oldest ones because they were there originally, like even before the Asteri. So it makes sense that she would be the oldest.
I've never even thought about hell from Crescent City. So now that you've mentioned it and I've connected the dots, 100%, because if I remember, there were 12 princes, if like my memory's a bit murky there. And I think we've only like kind of discovered 2 or 3 of them. Like there's still a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that is a strong possibility. So I think you just went for your third mic drop moment. Well done.
I am a huge conspiracy lover. I love, even in books, real life, all that stuff. Like it's so fun to just weave together these possible ideas. Like theory was very fun in school for me.
I wanted to ask your take on something that's maybe on the borderline controversial. We look at traditional versus indie publishing, and to the listeners that aren't familiar, indie publishing is when you're self-published. There is this perception that indie is maybe not as high quality as traditional, or traditional authors aren't held as to high standards as we are in the indie space. Why do you think that is?
I've seen so many threads and Facebook posts and Instagram posts and just debates about this topic. It's like, where someone's like, oh, if you publish a book, like, you need to have that same standard of a trad author. And I think the missing link is honestly that most readers don't realize the complexity and just how much goes into publishing a book. It's not just, oh, I wrote this and I'm publishing it. No, there's so many contributing factors, and it's not a quick thing. It's not just, oh, let me throw together this manuscript, make a cover on Canva, or buy a pre-made and then publish on Amazon. No, like it takes months, it takes years realistically to publish a book. But what I feel like the missing factor that a lot of readers don't realize is that trad authors, what they have at their disposal versus what an indie author has, and a so traditionally published author, they don't have the cost of editing their books. They don't have the cost of hiring a designer for their book covers. They have content strategy and branding done for them by the publisher. They help, yes, but it's now no longer this stressful, oh my gosh, I need to have a month or two of content, scheduled out, and I have to create it all myself, and I need to, find all these reference images, and I have to pull all these quotes. Like, there's so much that an indie author has to take on for themselves versus a trad author doesn't pay for any of that. It's all funded in-house by the publisher. So they see this book and they expect it to have the same level of professionalism and finesse. And there's a lot of indie authors who can't afford that. And, it is unfortunate, but the reality is like, if you want to have a book that is at the same level as a traditionally published book, you need to have developmental edits. You need to have copy and line edits. You need to have proofreaders, readers, plural. You need to have a decent budget for a book cover. And then it's an indie author also has to market themselves. We start from scratch. We know no one, we have no following, and a traditionally published author might be the same, but they now have a publisher who has millions and millions of people buying their logoed books and their printed out books. And it's a lot easier to get that reach from a publisher than it is for an indie author.
It's so true what you're saying, though, because in the beginning, when I started publishing, I'm a few books in, I couldn't afford editing. And it's just the truth, because editing is not a cheap exercise. And that is not knocking editors, because they need to make a livable wage as well. So, you can find cheap editors, but as we know, cheap doesn't always mean good. You can find super expensive editors. At the same time, that is kind of irrelevant to the discussion right now, because just like I have a daily rate in my day job, same concept. I only could actually start taking editing on from last year. And now if I look at let's call it my overall editing bill for 2025, it is not a cheap exercise at all. But now I can play in that space where at the beginning of my career, I couldn't. So I fully agree with you on that. I ask every guest what their hot take is relating to the bookish industry, community, anything trend related. So what's your hot take?
Okay, so I know that we talk every day, so that it's a little unfair. But I know I had one that I was discussing with you earlier this week, but it's not quite as prevalent with the book community. So I diverted a little bit more. Maybe I'll come back for another episode and I can discuss the first one that we powwowed on. But so this one it might be a little controversial, but I feel like this is actually becoming a little bit more of a popular topic and want from readers. Is, for me, I don't want all FMCs to be this badass, independent, I don't need no man, like Aylin level, I'm not going to say anything, I don't need anyone's help. FMC, I don't think that all of them need to be like that. I think that having multidimensional women should be celebrated and encouraged. I think that it's okay for an FMC to want the help of the MMC or friends and have him protect her, shield her. I don't think that makes her weak. I think that as long as the growth of the FMC over the story, whether it's, a standalone, a duology, trilogy, or a full series, as long as it shows that she can stand her own ground, it's okay to have this yummy, morally gray shadow daddy, or, lightning wielding, or whatever, just a yummy man standing beside her. I don't think that hurts to have FMC. So.
It's actually I have been seeing that a lot from reader feedback, just overall, not necessarily specific to my work, where they're asking for more, I almost want to say, representation. So I talk about, and I hate that she's the only example I can reference, but Violet from Fourth Wing, she has a chronic illness. And that was the first time I even knew that was a chronic issue that people were dealing with. And I was like, okay, cool. There's actually an education piece that's going along here. And even though how she was seen as frail, she was still doing the badass things. So I've seen that feedback a lot. I really have. So thank you for sharing.
Phantasma,
okay,
the female main character, she has OCD. So it's not necessarily having to do with the mental health, although, mental health rep is great. And I love, how we're not purposely saying, oh, I have OCD, or I have anxiety, or I have ADHD in a book, but it's implied. I like that. I think that's really, I think that's really comforting for a lot of people, but I'm digressing. For Phantasma, she was like, I don't need help. But guess what she kept doing? She kept going and getting that help from Blackwell. And she wouldn't have been able to get through that without Blackwell. And I think that that's part of why Phantasma got so big, is that, one, it was different. It was a different take, it was a different type of FMC. It was one who was like, oh yeah, no, I have to hold up my family's legacy. I'm now the next in line, from my mom, but I don't want to do this. And then gets thrown into this situation where she's like, okay, maybe my, tough as nails attitude is not going to help me in this situation. And she shows that vulnerability. I think that vulnerability should be a little bit more open, rather than in most books, it's, there's this very, very beautiful, deep, private conversation or moment that happens with the FMC, and normally, obviously, with the MMC, where she finally shows, that she's like, oh yeah, I don't want to X, or, I am actually terrified, but I'm acting like I'm brave. Those moments are beautiful. Don't get me wrong. They're like some of my favorite, but I just feel like it's okay for an FMC to start out that way and then build and gain that confidence.
So true. And actually, I love that you referenced Phantasma there, because I think the way OCD was handled really helped me understand a lot of what people with OCD are dealing with, and how crippling it can be as well. Which that actually is the perfect introduction into our next question, where in BookTok, there is a reputation for viral sensations, and one day you have no idea who this author is. The next day it has like millions and millions of readers. So in a world, or in a industry of BookTok's viral sensations, what are you hoping for from your writing career?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I want to go viral. If anyone says they don't want to go viral, I'm not going to be inclined to believe them from off the, right off the cuff. It's like, I'm not saying that I understand what going viral means. I'm not implying that at all. I have no doubt that I don't have a firm grasp at all on what it entails and what it would be like to have that a viral, post or video or just a book go viral, whether it's overnight, a week, a month, whatever. But I'm an instant gratification kind of girl. So of course, it would be amazing to garner such a huge fandom for my book overnight. I think that anyone who, especially us struggling indie authors, we would love to be able to just see that boom and success happen so quickly. But on the realistic side, I spent all of 2024 studying, the slow but steady growth and how that can be even more valuable than going viral. I think it creates real relationships in the book community. You are building basically, these concrete foundation slabs with each step that you go when you're doing, the slow but steady race. And I feel like I would rather have those diehard from the beginning when I was a nobody readers, which I already have several of those. Like when I post on Instagram, I get, comments, or I get DMs from readers that I've never met before. They have nothing from me to read yet, except for a couple quotes and things that I post about. And they're like, I cannot wait for your book.
These are just my words, but it's getting this reaction from someone else. And for me, that is definitely one of the highlights of being an author. Obviously, the sales part is nice as well. Anyone who says otherwise is going to be lying to you. But yeah, I think that's, if you really think about what we do as authors, it's how do we evoke these strong emotions from our readers? And you've done that really well, and you haven't even released your book yet. So I'm really encouraged for your future as an author. What's an underrated fantasy read that you've loved recently?
All right. So full disclosure, I don't really have an answer for this.
Okay.
I was scrubbing through my Goodreads and my audiobooks because I'm an audiobook girly. But to be frank, I spent 2023, which I only read like four or five books in 2023, and I spent all of 2024 reading fantasy strictly for research. Mm-hmm. I knew that I was, deep diving into this now. I was, fully committed to becoming a published author. And I wanted to see what these mass trade readers were reading, whether it was, from big indie authors to trad authors, and what they were writing, what these readers were gobbling up, what they were going feral for. But, and it's funny because for me, I think that underrated means, under 300 reviews, and things like that. But then it was very funny when I was looking through all this stuff, I happened to scroll through my feed on Instagram, and someone posted like, oh, my top 5 underrated fantasies. And they were all these massive indie authors. They were still indie authors, but like it was like from Blood and Steel, Helen Schreiber.
I can see the cover in my mind. I know exactly which one you're talking about. It's like the reddish cover.
Yeah. So I read book 1. I'm on book 2 right now, but she has like 40,000 plus reviews. And I'm like, that's underrated?
Yeah, that sounds like she's doing quite well, actually.
She's doing pretty dang well. And I mean, she's now has her like multiple special editions of her books, which I have all of them because I have a lot of book subscriptions. But so I was like, oh, that's interesting that's someone's concept of underrated versus mine is like no one knows about it. But so I actually started reading a couple of my underrated TBR books. So like When Gods Fall is one of them. And then let me pull up my Kindle. I don't want to butcher title.
Like the indie authors that need the hype, because there's enough space for all of us. I think I read a stat recently that in the States alone, there is, I think, over 2 million fantasy authors. I actually find it hard to get specific on that number because it's such a saturated market. But at the same time, the US is also the biggest consumer of fantasy. And I mean, we all know how big the US is. So like there is enough space to have all these authors and to still all be successful. But to see people recommending the same author or the same series over and over again, it just gets a little bit, let's call it discouraging. Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, Shadows of the Crown by Dakota Monroe. She only has like 100-something reviews. Her cover is gorgeous. It has her character on it. And I maybe that's even also a hot take. I like book covers with characters on them.
Okay.
But yeah, so it has to be done in a certain way. But I think that when they're done well, I enjoy having characters on covers. But yeah, so Shadows of the Crown, I just started reading that one. And it's the premise sounds really, really good. So to me, someone who has even under 100 reviews, that to me is an underrated fantasy author. But maybe that's too underrated because obviously there needs to be a little bit of hype for someone to be considered, underrated. So
Yeah, that's so true. By the way, I'm definitely adding that to my TBR because I take your book recommendations very seriously, and we know this already.
yeah, I'm also reading City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. So good. You need to. I was gonna message you this morning about it. It's phenomenal. I'm only on like chapter 4. It's paranormal romance. It's so good. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So
Anyway,
is it that white cover?
yes.
Is it okay? I'm seeing that book is haunting me. I need to read it this evening.
Yep.
Sold.
Yep. Do it. It's she's thick, which I'm a thick book girly. It's so good. I'm like already from chapter 1. I'm just like, oh, this is so good, and that takes a lot for me to say.
And I know that from experience. And for me, I think I'm looking for that. The last time I felt that strongly about a book was actually the Kindred Curse saga, where I was reading that book in my lunch breaks. I was even at a work event, like on my Kindle, like under the table because the work event was boring me. So that unputdownable. I mean, I don't even know if that's a word, but that whole feeling is something that high. That's what I'm chasing again.
Oh, same. I have not had that since Throne of Glass, which I read the entire series in January last year. But yeah, so I was chasing that high all of 2024, and it did not come.
So that actually makes me want to ask you. We love the bookish community. We wouldn't be here without the bookish community, and that is just a fact. But there are certain pockets of the community that has become very opinionated. So there's things like you can't if you're an author, you can't review another author, or audiobooks don't count as reading, which is weird to say. So we're seeing a lot of these opinions start surfacing, which is different.
Yes.
What do you believe? What is your take on situations like that?
Yeah, so for me, I believe we all have a baseline sense of righteousness. And I'm not saying that in a negative context at all. It's just inherent in us. We don't like being wrong. You know? So, but we're also a society that now thrives while destroys on interjecting our opinions on others. I've seen it a lot in the bookish community, and it breaks my heart when I see it. But it's not just opinions. It's having these arguments and losing kind of all sense of propriety and respect for others in order to convince them that they're wrong and you're right. And it's a topic that can go really off the rails. So in terms of book opinions, we are a community, and a community always has a set of rules. And it's kind of similar with like an HOA, like community, like a housing community.
Yeah,
majority rules. With those set of rules, it's everyone in that community may not agree with those rules, but most of us do. So I definitely believe that we are all entitled to our opinions. I never want to I never want to squash anyone. Everyone has the freedom of speech. They have the right to say what they want to say. But to me, that doesn't mean you have the right to mistreat or be disrespectful to your fellow book lovers, especially when you're just trying to cram what you believe is right down their throats. Because it can be that cutthroat. And I think that that's really unfair. I understand that we all have heated opinions, and I feel like that should be kind of step back and take a breath and look at it. Because as someone who has been very near and dear and close to my heart for many years, Harry Styles says, treat people with kindness.
It's so true.
And I also follow, just for my own self and my own beliefs, I treat others how I would want to be treated. So I don't know about you, Steph, but I like being treated with, like a princess. I like being treated with authentic sincerity, empathy, and interest. So, but no one likes to be yelled at. No one likes to be accused of things, called names, told, to go do horrific things to yourself. Like, no. So I think that there just needs to be a bit more grace in having those topics. I don't think that it's wrong to have those opinions, but it's just with the way that they're communicated that I really feel like just needs to be changed?
Yeah, so I think tolerance is definitely a big thing. And I mean, this extends outside the bookish community as well. You can still love someone and disagree with them at the same time. We've disagreed on topics, and that hasn't changed our friendship in any way. In fact, I think it's actually brought us closer because it's forced us to question how do we handle a situation like this and still come out of it the other end. And I love that for us too, because how boring would it be if we all had the same opinion?
Yeah, like that's like the perfect. I love when someone says that, and I know you've said that multiple times, and I always just have my own mic drop moment. It's like, if we were all the same, it would be so boring. Like everything that is unique and, you know, vivacious and colorful and like passion and all these wonderful, you know, things, they stem from everyone's individuality. And I think that we need to, you know, celebrate those individualities rather than fighting with each other about it.
Yeah, I fully agree. So I have one more question for you before we wrap up. Readers and listeners out there are probably dying to know, when can we expect to see your work available to the public? I know I want to know.
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely more for you. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with. I love my cheerleaders. They, whenever you know, push me and say like, I want you, when am I getting the book? When are you going to be done? You know, I never take that as a negative, but that honestly just fuels me. It makes me feel so good. Because when it was just me writing for myself, it was like, oh, okay, I don't need to rush and hurry this manuscript along. Like, it's just for me, because I have dozens of manuscripts like that. I just wrote them for me because I had this idea in my head. But now that this is going to be an actual published book, people I know having, you know, readers just randomly DM me, it fuels that fire for me to actually make this happen and to make it happen as fast as possible. So, you know, probably more than anyone, I've had some very serious setbacks in my life that unfortunately I had to, you know, make known that it pushed back my my releases for When Stars Entwine with Flames. I have, you know, this long, arduous issue with the home that I bought with my husband. That's just been an absolute nightmare. We lost half of our home with the 3 hurricanes that hit Florida last year. So like, this is our bed, as you can see, like, and we're in my living room. I also lost my office, so that's why I'm out here. And then I lost my job because of the hurricanes, because it destroyed the warehouse where all of our products were. So all those things, unfortunately, you know, they've affected this wonderfully, beautifully crafted timeline that I compiled with Jordan, who I did an author mentorship with, on your recommendation, which, you know, thank you very much for that. That was truly the most wonderful thing that I could have ever done for myself as an author. But I had all of 2025 month by month scheduled out. And now that's been pushed back. I pushed it back 6 months. It could be longer. It could be shorter. Mm-hmm. So I did apply, and I've actually had several people. I reached out to them, which was very difficult for me to do, to apply for an indie scholarship that Melissa K. Rorick, LJ Andrews, and Penn Cole are sponsoring. So it offers basically like grant money for indie authors to help them with their book expenses. So yes, I know, you know, I know several people have applied, and you know, we worked on that together for each other. So I really hope that I can get that, because if I did get that scholarship money, I would be able to publish in 2025.
So I have never rooted for anyone more, because I definitely think the world needs your stories, plural, because I know there's more than one. And in the meantime, how can readers support you best while you figure all these things out? And that's question number 1. And statement number 2 is, thank you for being so vulnerable with us. I know it's not easy to share something so deeply personal with us, especially when I know for a fact that all you've ever wanted to is to be a full-time author. So I hope that anyone who's maybe in a similar situation to you can really just take inspiration from you and how you have handled the situation. You're not giving up, you're just pivoting.
Yeah.
And I love that. So how can readers best support you?
I think definitely following me on Instagram. I don't know what's happening with TikTok in America. I know that potentially it's going to be up to the per state if it gets banned or not. I really don't think that that's going to happen. I think that that whole situation is just a game that the government wanted to just play and be like, haha, let's take away everyone's fun times. And like, again, people have been overnight success, not even just in book communities, but just as a regular person, they've become an overnight millionaire, you know, from TikTok. And I think that taking that away from people is taking away the possibility of them becoming more than just the 9 to 5. On TikTok, I'm still going to act as though TikTok is not going anywhere. I hopefully will be able to get the book up on Goodreads so that people can add it to their TBR on there. So I'm hoping to have that up there soonish. So if they, you know, or if they follow me on Goodreads, that would also help me. So just basically, you know, keeping up with my posts. You know, I've said this to a few author friends that before 2025 is up, I'm going to already basically have shared my entire manuscripts in post, because like I keep sharing all these like long quotes and snippets from my book. And I'm like, basically the entire book will just have been shared as as marketing, you know, content. So if you follow me on social media, you'll basically get the full book in tiny little crumbs, and you just piece them together like a puzzle.
Well, I sucked at puzzles, so I'm still waiting for the full book. But Alex, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been incredible just to understand your take on the bookish industries, or the things that you're considering as you go into publishing. I will pop your Instagram handle in the episode description so that if anyone wants to follow you, they can go so from there. Until then, we'll keep up on your Instagram page and hope that everything works out the way you need it to.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.